This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Welcome to a very special edition of Real Talk as we sit down one-on-one with Canada's Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau. He's in our home province of Alberta, making a housing announcement like he did in BC yesterday. We know that this is a top priority for this government. Canadians from coast to coast grappling with not just the cost of housing, but the availability of it as well. We're going to talk about population growth across the country. We'll talk about the price on carbon. We'll talk about polls and whatever else comes up over the next 20 minutes or so. But first, I want to put something on your radar. You may have heard that credential fraud is on the rise across the country. You know, luckily, fake credentials, of course, as they're putting Canadian safety at risk. There's an innovative technology coming out of our home province, privacy technology being built right here in Alberta by We Know Training. Now, why does this matter? Because nurses, oil patch workers, personal support workers are all encountering fake credentials in their industries. Well, We Know Training and verifiable credentials are looking to make credential fraud a thing of the past. This means that borders will be more efficient down the line. Regulated professions will have better proof of licensure, and your individual privacy will be much better protected. Verifiable credentials, they can't be forged, falsified, or altered. And with We Know Training, they can also plug seamlessly into your training courses. If you know exactly what we're talking about, if this is on your radar, or even if it hasn't been till now, you can visit verifiablecredentials.ca to learn more. Prime Minister Trudeau, welcome to the Real Talk studio. Welcome to Alberta.
Glad to be here in person. It's nice to talk on the phone, but it's better to be here in person.
It's been a tough 6 months for you and your government. The polls are predicting basically a bloodbath next election. Where's your head at?
My head's at what we're actually focused on doing, which is creating opportunities for Canadians getting through these tough times. You know, polls had me behind in 2015 before we won. Polls had me behind in 2019. Polls will always go up and down, and particularly at a time where people are hurting. People are facing real challenges, the global inflation crisis, the disrupted supply chains, the impacts of climate change. There's a lot of things hitting people, including, as you mentioned, the cost of housing and the availability of housing. These are problems that we're focused on trying to solve, and we're working on getting there with partners across the country. And I'm going to stay focused on that rather on the political polls that are, flowing a lot of ink.
These ones seem to be a little bit different, though. Like you've always been the personable guy. You've always been the likable guy. You've had the charisma, and that's carried you in past. But right now you're looking at your party polling 20 points behind the Conservatives. You know, your personal likability. When people take a look at your personal net approval of minus 33, it's got to get in your head.
Actually, first of all, I think one of the things that carried us through the past is what we actually did in terms of policies. People still think I won the 2015 election because of nice hair. What we won was because of the Canada Child Benefit, because of commitments to invest in communities, because of commitments to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them on the middle class, because of commitments to fight climate change and put more money in people's pockets. And those are the things that we did. And while people talk about my appearance or whether they want to have a beer with me or not, I've got to stay focused, particularly in this time, on a world that's quite literally on fire in some places. We just declared wildfire season early here in Alberta, dealing with wars around the world, dealing with complexities in a transforming environment and economy, to actually keep Canadians successful, not just for the coming years, but for the coming decades. That's the job I'm doing. It's not a popularity contest. It's about delivering every single day. That's the thing that drives me. If I wanted to be popular, I wouldn't have chosen politics. If you want to get things done to build a better country, that's why you get into politics.
For what it's worth, and you're referencing the op-ed, I think, in the Toronto Star this week that suggested that Gen Z, that the newest generation, doesn't want to have a beer with you. Back in 2015, everybody was talking. Have you seen it?
I didn't even see that.
Well, in 2015, there was polling that said everybody did want to have. They wanted a beer with you over Stephen Harper and Thomas Mulcair at that point. For what it's worth, We're running, as we speak, an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll. Who would you rather have a beer with? And we've put you on there, Mr. Polyev, Mr. Singh, and Mr. Bernier. And you're polling all right, 59%, which is the highest approval you've seen all week.
I don't get to say, oh, you know what? I don't look at national polls and then react to your little poll and say, oh, isn't that great?
My little
Looks
poll.
like people actually like me.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work that way. The things that matter are the things that matter to Canadians in their daily lives when they're not thinking about politics. Right now, politics is designed to get people riled up and take a strong opinion on this or that or the other thing. And people step out of their daily lives to get angry about politics, but their daily lives where they're having trouble making the mortgage payment or looking at the grocery bills or worrying about getting care for their parents or worrying about whether they're going to have childcare for their kids, they're not thinking about politics. They're just trying to think about how they're solving the challenges in their life. And so much of politics is disconnected from that right now because people are trying to create wedge issues left, right, and center to get people outraged, to get people motivated, and to prevent people from noticing that a lot of what particularly the right is doing is about stoking up anger without offering any solutions.
So is it harder for you to get people's attention? Is it harder for you to connect with the middle class than it was 10 years ago? Is there like a government exhaustion that you see the country experiencing right now?
That might be, certainly there's some of that, familiarity with what this government has done has that impact, but people aren't really focused on politics right now. Last year, we had a number of by-elections across the country. And by-elections are interesting. We got one right now in Aaron O'Toole's seat in Ontario, where it's a moment for people to actually think about choices in politics. You know, when you get a poll and you say, okay, you're going to vote for A or B, you take 2 seconds and press on the button on your phone. Okay. If you're in a by-election situation, you're actually reflecting on, okay, this actually matters. I'm going to vote. What do I want as a community? What do I want in a country? That reflection about what actual consequences are in our democracy doesn't happen a year and a half from an election. So in those by-elections, we actually increased the share of vote. Even though we were way behind in the polls nationally and even regionally, we increased the share of the vote because people are thoughtful when it comes to actually choosing. When it's no cost, no friction, being outraged at something, yeah, it's easy to be outraged at the government in place because everyone out there is blaming us for everything that's going wrong, including Putin deciding to invade Ukraine or climate change or what have you. The fact is, a government's job is to keep plugging away, working hard, solving problems for people, and when the election comes around, people sit back and say, okay, what is the choice we're facing? What kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of solutions are being offered? And where are we going as a country? And who's got the best idea of where we're going as a country? And who's going to be able to deliver that? That's not the conversation being had around politics right now. It's, if we're lucky, who do you want to have a beer with? If we're unlucky, who do you most want to see booted out of the country or arrested for treason? Those conversations are exciting to have in political chat, but they're not actually constructive in how we're going to deliver for the things that people matter.
Yeah, you talk to a lot of people and they'll talk about, maybe the Liberal Party needs a definitive change at the top. How convinced are you? Are you 100% convinced that you're going to lead this party into the next election?
I got into politics to make a difference. I got into politics to make this country a better place because a whole bunch of different reasons. I was a school teacher and I saw that was a way of making an impact. I loved having a positive impact on my community. I watched my dad have a positive impact on the community. I watched my mom fight for mental health advocacy all her life. These are things that I know drive me. Right now, in politics, not just in Canada, but around the world, there is a fundamental question being asked around which way we go as democracies. People have realized that it is easy to instrumentalize anger and outrage and get people to vote in ways that are not necessarily in their best interest. Take the challenges of the United States in the 2016 election, for example. These are things that can be powerful tools in politics, and they will leave people worse off. For me, I know that Canadians are better than that. I know that Canadians are thoughtful, are looking out for their neighbors, believe in science, believe in building a better future, want real solutions on the table. And the challenge of the next election is going to be definitional in terms of what kind of country we are, which direction we want to go in. Do we stay anchored in science? Do we stay anchored in building for the long term? Do we make sure we're protecting vulnerable people and give them opportunities to contribute? Or do we give in to the easy populism, anger, and division that is so running rampant in every society around the world? That question, that core choice about who we are as Canadians, is so fundamentally important that I could not be the person I am and choose to step away from this fight right now when it is so important, just because it's getting a little difficult, or people are wondering if they're not tired of me or whatever. You know what? Let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about the things that actually matter, and let's deliver them for people. And I like that conversation that needs to be had when the next election comes about the kind of country we're going to be. And yes, I will absolutely be part of it.
Let's talk about, you talk about the 2016 presidential election. Let's talk about the 2024 presidential election. What's at stake here? For all intents and purposes, it's going to be a rematch, Biden versus Trump, Prime Minister of Canada. Obviously some tumultuous years with President Trump in office. How are you approaching what may happen in November?
Listen, I'm on my third U.S. president, and even the ones that I was really close to and aligned with, like Obama and Biden, they're not easy. The U.S. interests, the U.S. perspective, the way the U.S. is both polarized and a little more protectionist right now, is challenging for Canada no matter what. So anytime there's an election, that's going to get heightened. And regardless of who wins the next election, there are going to be challenges where we have to stand up for Canada. We had to stand up against Biden when he was moving for electric vehicles not to be built in Canada. We managed to solve that. And the way we solved that was the way we solved for renegotiating NAFTA, which was by demonstrating that it's not in the U.S. interests to be marginalizing or putting barriers in front of at the Canadian border, because it hurts American businesses. The way you approach it is to demonstrate the reliability, the integration, and the work together. And that was something that I was able to do with Donald Trump. We were able to renegotiate NAFTA when he had promised to rip it up in a way that has benefited Canada in a whole bunch of different ways. So we're going to allow the Americans, obviously, to make their choice next November, and we're going to stay true to our values and true in our constructive engagement with the United States. I
want to talk to you about the future of the carbon tax. Public confidence in it seems to be shot. There was obviously the debacle in Atlantic Canada with the heating oil. You've got the CRA declaring Saskatchewan as the provider of natural gas. Looks like Premier Moe's pretty intent on not paying what that province owes to federal coffers when it comes to that carbon tax. It's been the defining policy of your time as Prime Minister. I know that your government's attempting to rebrand it. How committed are you to sticking with it as Canada's climate action tool?
Putting a price on pollution is a profoundly small c conservative idea. The idea of letting market forces drive innovation instead of using the heavy hands of regulation. The idea of saying, well, listen, there is a cost to pollution in the atmosphere that everyone recognizes, including Alberta government, by saying, no, we need to get to net zero by 2050. And the easiest mechanism to do that is to put a price on the pollution that we emit that is causing negative consequences, including wildfires that are costing billions of dollars across the country and lives and livestock. So what we knew, though, was when we put forward that price on pollution, it was going to hit families across the country. And therefore, instead of saying the profits from the pollution will pull them into greener industries, which is probably the best way of accelerating carbon reduction, we said, no, we have to build in affordability. And that's why we put money back in average households' pockets that is greater than the cost of the price on pollution. So here in Alberta, this coming year, $1,800 is the Canada carbon rebate that they're going to be getting. A family of four gets $1,800 back, which is more than they pay with the price on pollution.
But you've said this a lot, and people have heard this message a lot, and it doesn't seem to be landing. It doesn't seem to be resonating. You probably know, or maybe you don't, the two of the three declared candidates in the Alberta NDP leadership race. I mean, it's one thing to get chirped from the right on the carbon tax. This is the left. Two of the three candidates say it's time to move on from the consumer carbon tax. How does that land with you?
Well, listen, first of all, when we brought in the price on pollution, the carbon tax in 2015, the NDP stood against it then too. They didn't particularly want it. But environmentalists, environmental organizations know that putting a price on pollution and allowing the market to actually drive solutions is one of the best ways of doing it, and putting more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians makes a lot of sense. Now, the political fight that has been created around this, whether it's Scott Moe or Danielle Smith or others trying to instrumentalize, or Pierre Poilievre, of course, who never talks about the $450 rebate check that comes in every 3 months to the family of four in Alberta's pockets, that he would actually take away if he were to scrap the tax. There is no way to fight climate change in a more efficient way that puts more money back in Canadians' pockets than putting a price on pollution. But, as I've said many times, the federal program is a backstop. If a province wants to come up with a way to price carbon in a different way and do different things with that money, as long as it's equivalent to what everyone's doing across the country, they can do that. So if a new government in Alberta wants to change the way they put a price on pollution, knock themselves out. What matters is that we continue to send to industry a very clear signal that those who invest in innovative solutions, those who reduce their carbon emissions, will get advantage, will not be penalized for having made investments that are good for workers, good for the environment, good for the economy of the future.
I want to ask you about your environment minister, Stephen Guilbeault, who's essentially made headlines with his no more new roads comments. It sounds like the underlying theme, he believes Canada's road infrastructure is adequate to meet upcoming population growth. Alberta, you obviously know, expected to see its population double over the next 25 years, which will require probably significant investment in infrastructure. Do you agree with your environment minister? Or do you disagree?
He has since explained his comments as speaking about specifically a Quebec City project that we all disagreed with, including with Quebec City disagreed with. The issue is that we have, as a government, invested massively in road infrastructure across this country. We widened the Yellowhead Highway. We've invested hundreds of $millions in the Calgary Ring Road. We're going to continue to invest in infrastructure. The underlying point is we need to make sure we're building the right infrastructure for the future. That means investing a lot more in public transit, but that does mean building more roads where they're necessary. We have ice roads that are no longer holding across the northern prairies because of climate change. We're going to have to build new roads to get to distant communities, to get to resource projects. These are things that the federal government will continue to be a part of, but we have to be thoughtful about the ways the world are changing and be there to respond to it.
You're making a series of housing announcements across the country, including right after you talk to us here in Edmonton. It'll be you, the mayor of Edmonton, your former colleague Amarjeet Sohi, former infrastructure minister, Minister Randy Boissonnault, jobs minister as well. The province not invited to the announcement. Is this going to be the new model? Is it going to be your government, the feds, partnering with municipalities?
One of the things that we know in terms of building housing is the provinces have a huge role to play. And yesterday, I was in BC announcing a $2 billion federal investment in a BC Builds program that is totally run by the province to create middle-income rental housing, like for firefighters or teachers, in urban centers where they're being pushed out to the suburbs by using underutilized public or nonprofit land. So that's something the federal government's doing with provinces, and we encourage other provinces to step up and do the same thing, because we'll step up to the same level that they will. But we also know that working specifically with municipalities is a way of getting things done. Our Rapid Housing Initiative over the past years has created thousands of new units across Alberta, in Calgary, in Edmonton, and we've done that with the cities specifically. The Housing Accelerator is a slightly different model. It's saying, instead of saying, okay, we're building a 120 unit with partial federal money on this corner, we're building a 80-person seniors residence over here with federal money, we're going to continue to do that through different programs. But the thing we're trying to do is change the underlying way cities look at housing. How can we increase densification? How can we make sure that you have 4 units as of right on any given residential plot? How can you automatically be able to build 4 stories or a new garden unit in a lane? How can you make sure that we're accelerating the zoning around transit stations to build more densification so people can walk to transit than to walk to work? How are you using more public, including federal land, to leverage housing quicker? How do you cut down red tape? The $4 billion investment that we have in the Housing Accelerator is all about changing the way municipalities approve and get housing built to not just create thousands, but much more than that over the coming years, because we've changed the structure of the way housing is built in this country to make deep changes in the housing supply issues.
Before we run out of time, I want to ask you about the future of 2 industries. One big government investment. You've promised one of the biggest government-led asset sales in Canadian history. That, of course, is the Trans Mountain Pipeline. It's gone over budget. Soon, capacity to get Alberta crude to the coast will be tripled. It's expected that Canada will take a loss on the sale. We don't know for sure yet. What will mark in your mind, a successful investment? How will you evaluate that investment when it's all said and done?
First of all, buying the Trans Mountain Pipeline wasn't about hoping to turn a profit for the government. It was about making sure that Alberta crude was not landlocked, was not prisoner to one single customer in the United States. I took a lot of grief across the country for buying a pipeline, but I knew that if we want to be able to pay for the innovation, the transformation of our economy to be greener, to be cleaner, we need to get the best possible price for our oil products now. And that means getting out across the Pacific. And that meant twinning the Trans Mountain Pipeline. That's why we bought the pipeline, because it was good for Alberta and it's good for the country. Now, it is finally about to be completed, and that'll be good news for the industry. And now the government shouldn't be in the business of owning or running pipelines. We had to secure it. We had to de-risk it so that it could get completed. Now that it's about to be completed, we're looking at hopefully being able to sell it to Indigenous partners so they can actually benefit from it in a way that Alberta's actually done a lot of over the past years. This is a good step around reconciliation. It's a good step around making sure we're getting a better price for our oil while we look at innovating in ways that we can actually grow the economy and protect people in the future. The problem I have with the oil sands, or had with the oil sands over many years, is that people were doubling down and not preparing for the future. And that perhaps was something that a company can pivot off of in a decade or two and just change their investments. But Albertans working in the oil sands, they need to have other jobs that they can do. And that's why our investments in things like hydrogen, like Dow Chemical, our investments in sending renewable money into Alberta to innovate is so important. I was talking with the Alberta Business Council just last fall, who were really frustrated about the pause that the Alberta government put on renewables investment. Hopefully that is going to end next week, because Alberta has always been leading the way on investments. And the secret of that environmentalists in Canada don't necessarily want to acknowledge is we don't get to reach our targets. We don't get to thrive in a net zero world as a country unless Alberta is part of leading the way with the innovation, with the transformation, with the hydrogen, with the carbon capture, utilization, and storage, with the kinds of solutions that Albertans have always brought forward on energy. Canada can and should be the reliable provider of net zero energy in a net zero world by 2050. And if we're going to be that, we need Albertans to be thinking and working on that every single day. And having a government in Alberta that won't even talk about the reality of climate change is putting the brakes on making sure there are good jobs for Albertans in the energy sector for decades to come. That's what I'm focused on. And the fear-mongering and distraction of the right is actually harming Albertans' approach.
Yeah, so what can you do about that? I mean, I'll note that we're at time here, so your team can come yank you if they need to.
This is a good conversation.
Okay, I want to acknowledge that because you catch more. It's obvious. I mean, I don't know if you read the comments, even when we promote your appearance here on the show, you catch more heat out of Alberta than anywhere else in the country. But you're here banging on the table. Yeah. Your enthusiasm is palpable. But you and I both know you're still not going to get a lot of credit from the Premier. You're not going to get a lot of credit from people that are working on the drilling rigs right now.
If I was worried about credit, I never would have bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I would Eastern urban environmentalist voters would have said, yeah, no, great. I took a huge hit in the teeth for buying that Trans Mountain pipeline because it was the right thing to do for the country, not because, maybe I can win 2 or 3 seats in Alberta. In 2015, when we won 4 seats in Alberta, it was because for the previous 5 years, I was showing up in Alberta 2 or 3 times a year, meeting with people, talking about the challenges, talking about how important Alberta's success is to the rest of the country. Now, maybe I start with a huge disadvantage because my last name is Trudeau, and people are ready to just automatically ignore me anytime I show up anywhere where they don't like me. Fine. But I am not going to stop showing up. I am not going to stop investing in Alberta. I'm not going to stop making sure that the country sees that Alberta also has a lot of thoughtful progressives that want to fight climate change, that see the opportunity and the prosperity that comes in from being smarter about carbon emissions, creating technologies that the world's going to rely on, and make sure that as the world reduces its consumption of barrels of oil in the coming decades, there is still room for Alberta barrels of oil to be part of that solution because we have successfully decarbonized, because we have higher labor standards, because we have higher environmental standards. Those are the things that consumers around the world are going to be focused on and worried about, and that's where Alberta gets to build that success and that leadership in Canadian energy for decades to come, because the world is changing, and it's not a plot by Eastern bastards. It is a focus on where are the global investors coming in? What are they looking at? The world is looking at net zero right now. Alberta can be part of that, but right-wing ideology is getting in the way of Alberta's success right now. That it's a flip around of the old thing. Governments should get out of the way of Albertans actually innovating and creating that better future that they can work and build and deliver. If you can build a pipeline for oil sands oil, you can build a pipeline for hydrogen. If you can build the technology necessary for an oil sands refinery, you can build the technology necessary for a hydrogen plant. These are things that Albertans will have great jobs in the future if the Alberta government gets out of its ideological opposition to doing things that are good for workers, good for the planet, maybe not good for classic oil sands companies, except that they're also investing massively in decarbonization and renewables. This is the dynamic that, quite frankly, Albertans are getting fooled by right-wing politicians on.
I can already hear Premier Smith's response to this and the oil companies' CEO's responses to this, and they're going to say, did Justin Trudeau just tell us that government ideology needs to get out of the way of innovation in the oil sands? And I know that they're going to tear their hair out because
absolutely.
They feel that it's you that's been imposing liberal ideology onto the oil sands.
So what have we imposed on the oil sands?
You know what? We got literally dozens, if not hundreds of questions people wanted us to ask you, and a lot of people working in traditional oil and gas still don't believe. As much as you pound on this table, as much as you talk about the personal political risk that you took investing in TMX, they don't feel like you've had the industry's back. They don't feel like you've had Alberta's back. And I don't
think the oil industry has had the back of the oil sands workers. I don't think the industry, by dragging its heels on decarbonization in some sectors. Some of the oil sands companies have been really innovative and are leading the way on that, and that is great. And we are encouraging them, and we're investing with them, and we're supporting them in decarbonization investments. But those who are crossing their hands and saying, you know what, the world's still going to need oil for another decade or so, another few decades. It's still going to need every drop that we can produce. So why would we raise our costs right now and invest in innovation when we can just do the same things we've been doing for decades and make profits? And the fact that we're going to leave people with a dirty mess and no jobs because we haven't prepared for the jobs of the future, well, that's a problem for the next generation in this community. My job as a company, as a shareholder, is to draw profits out right now. That is what is hurting oil sands workers, and they've been fooled by people who are saying, oh, no, the climate change is a liberal or a Chinese plot. You don't have to worry about it. Just keep doing things exactly as they were a decade ago, 2 decades ago. That's not preparing for the future that Albertans, like all Canadians, know is changing.
I sure appreciate you staying into overtime with us. I got one last email. Sure. Dino wrote in. He says, I was very impressed with the Prime Minister's response to Bell Media's recent job cuts. Visibly frustrated he was with the ongoing reduction of legitimate, regulated local news coverage as more people fall victims to disinformation. If I were advising the Prime Minister, says Dino, I would tell him he needs to talk about all issues in the same tone as he spoke about those job cuts. Speak more from the heart, show more passion. I think you are today. Let me ask you this in closing. You showed uncharacteristic candor. You said that you were pissed off about what was happening. David Eby in BC have famously called it the encrapification of news. What is the proper role for the feds? There's no question. I'm not up for debate on the value of journalism, but to what extent does government get involved here, and what are you prepared to do?
See, that's the big trick and the really, really tricky question right now, because there is out there a deliberate undermining of mainstream media. There are the conspiracy theorists, there are the social media drivers who are trying to do everything they can to keep people in their little filter bubbles, to prevent people from actually agreeing on a common set of facts, the way, the CBC and CTV, when they were our only sources of news, used to project across the country at least a common understanding of things. Any government that chooses to step up and say, well, this is the mainstream view, will, if we're not careful, actually compromise those organizations as being mouthpieces for a mainstream view that people on the fringes are exactly. So how do we actually shift that? I think one of the ways you do it is create opportunities for strong, clear voices like yours, like this show, to be a source of news where people are actually drawing on real conversations and evidence-based presentation and thoughtful exposition and investigation where necessary. There are massive changes that need to happen in our media landscape, and government can try and create conditions and incentives for it to happen. But ultimately, it does come down to Canadians saying, you know what, I don't want to accept the encrafification of news. And quite frankly, the number of followers you have, the number of great podcasts people are out there getting their news from, the way people are consuming their stories from around the world in more thoughtful ways, that is a good thing. But where it's lacking is that local content, is the stories about the closure of this street that's going to cause trouble in this neighborhood. As soon as you get to a certain size, as soon as you have audience across the country, you can't spend a lot of time on what's happening down at the end of Main Street in your community. Figuring out how to invest and support local journalists telling local stories that both fit into people's relevant lives, but also make sense of the big picture in ways that resonate with them, the better off we are. So we're working on that. We're trying to make sure that Facebook, Google is going to. Facebook is still choosing to be bad guys about this and say, oh, we have no responsibility for what's on our platform. And that's bull. We all know that. But they have making gazillions of dollars in profits and don't feel any responsibility towards the democracies that actually allow them to be successful because people are free and free to share their opinions. These are things that are much bigger conversations than any one government can actually have. But we're part of it. We're having conversations about it. We're trying to fix it. We're putting money towards local independent media. We're going to continue to try and make sure that Canadians understand the importance of not being fooled by misinformation, by disinformation, develop their own critical skills to resist that sort of stuff, and highlight and come on shows like yours where people are asking tough questions and challenging people to actually reveal their own core thoughts and figure out whether or not we're going in the right direction as a country or not.
Well, listen, we sure appreciate your time on this. You've stayed well past what your team told us you could, and I know that that's a decision that you made. We appreciate that. If there's one thing I know you can appreciate, it's a good pair of socks, and so I want to leave you with these. These are Real Talk socks that are actually not for sale. These are only available to our Real Talk patrons, those who support us on Patreon. But when you wear these, number one, we're doing this in partnership with Boyle Street Community Services. They're helping people experience homelessness. But think of the independents, think of the entrepreneurs, think of the storytellers. Yeah. We've not lost faith, obviously, in the importance and the bold future of journalism, and that independence is important. But of course, we'll be watching with a keen eye along with 40 million other people to see what happens over the next number of months there.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Ryan.
We appreciate it. You can let us know what you think. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. We'll be back to get into our YouTube live chat. Obviously, big numbers today as we sit down one-on-one with the Prime Minister of Canada on his way as he leaves our studio to go make a big housing announcement right here in Edmonton. This episode is happening with the support of Real Talk partners like our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. Oh, Prime Minister, they want me to ask you, by the way, to top up the Canada Greener Homes Grant. That's what Kubi's looking for. They're Western Canada's biggest and busiest solar installer. And, of course, right now, Kubi is checking in with customers to be in BC, Alberta, into Saskatchewan, farms, industrial areas, you name it. Whether it's skyscrapers downtown or residences, cottages and cabins off the grid, Kubi does it all. And they're hiring right now. If you'd like to help grow clean energy in Canada, Kubi is young, growing, and reshaping Canada's energy portfolio. They're looking for installers, sales professionals, office managers. Learn more under the careers link at kubienergy.ca. If you're thinking of making investment in your home right now, and that starts with a custom closet or storage solution, you need to know that nobody does it better than California Closets. Whether it's a walk-in closet in your bedroom, whether it's turning that guest room into a home office, or vice versa, nobody has the team that California Closets has, whether it's their designers or their installers. They're going to elevate your project to the next level. And it all starts with a free design consultation. You can get that ball rolling at CaliforniaClosets.ca. Hey, speaking of hiring and talented professionals, Apex Automation is doing exactly that. Right now, they're looking for Canada's most skilled and experienced engineers. If you're feeling like you're just not hitting your career potential and you're working as a mechanical or electrical engineer, instrumentation or computer science engineers, processing engineers, electricians, explore a career at Apex Automation. They hire extraordinary people and give them opportunities to reach their full potential. People don't leave companies, they believe. People leave people. You can check out the careers link and start the next step today at apexautomation.ca. And for our audience members in the province of Alberta, you know that Friesen Brothers is Alberta grown and Alberta owned, 16 different locations across the province. They want to remind you that February is Heart Month, and Friesen Brothers is proud to partner with the University Hospital Foundation in fundraising for the MAZ, we call it, the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute. They're pleased to provide all their communities with great healthy eating opportunities. You can learn more in their Friesen Brothers February flyer or check out their website. That's friesen.com/Heart Month. All of their heart healthy products are marked with a Heart Month icon. That's through that Friesen Brothers flyer through the month of February. That is Heart Month. Well, our thanks to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for joining us here on the show. Obviously, a lot going on in the live chat. I'm going to be honest, I didn't take a lot of time to look at it, as we appreciate his availability. You know, that interview was supposed to be 12 minutes, then it got stretched to 20, and then I think he ended up spending about 35 with us, which was great.
Gave us the extra change. Thank you, JT.
Which was good. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, he's the guy calling the shots on his schedule. He's got an announcement to get to later today.
Of course.
We couldn't reveal all the details of that, of course, because he's not going to scoop his own announcement, but the federal government investing billions of dollars in housing, and they know that that's obviously a top priority, as he made very clear. I like Dino's take on the Prime Minister showing more passion. He says he wants to see him do that on more issues.
Yeah, I liked it too.
He says, Dino went on to, by the way, talking about Pierre Poilievre. He says the leader of the opposition in the House of Commons understands there's a lot of frustrated people in Canada, and the Prime Minister should take a page out of Poilievre's playbook and show that same kind of intensity when talking to Canadians. I mean, there's a matter of personality that comes into the mix there,
Sure.
but I thought it was an interesting one. Barbara wrote in to us as well, and want to thank everybody that took the time to send us emails, to send us the DMs on Instagram and Twitter that we got. You can follow us at Real Talk RJ. A lot of your feedback shaped the questions and the course of that interview. Barbara said, we all know that Pierre Poilievre distorts and exaggerates everything. Why is the Liberal Party not exposing his activities, his involvements, his associations? We all know that polls show that dirty tactics work. And please don't tell me, said Barbara, she quotes Michelle Obama, that when they go low, we go high. Barbara's had enough of that. She says that doesn't work. We want to see someone of consequence standing up to Pierre Poilievre. The media won't, says Barbara. Somebody has to. I think the media is trying, but he's not giving them a lot of a lot of opportunities there.
Thanks, Barb.
I thought that the Prime Minister was quite candid in talking to us today.
A lot more than he usually is. I thought that was great. Yeah,
he was kind of bouncing in his seat for a lot of the stuff he was talking about. You can tell it like when he starts talking. When I asked him, I said, "Hang on a second. I can already hear the Premier of Alberta responding to your talk about governments getting out of the way of industry, not allowing ideology to shape the direction of industry." You can tell that touched a nerve with him.
Sure, yeah.
In his response, and I'll be curious to see the response we get to that and to this interview. AJ said, it's becoming increasingly obvious that there's a real issue with communication between Trudeau's Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, and both the provincial governments and the media. And I'd be curious to know at what point would he put somebody new in charge of the environment and climate change portfolio who will actually start having collaborative discussions with the provinces. That from AJ, who wrote into the show. The Prime Minister may tell us, and to a certain degree it would be true, that he's not paying too much attention to polling. He's not too concerned about polling.
Yeah.
We're a ways out from the next election. We're talking 2025. That's when people expect it to be. But you can't tell me that you can completely ignore numbers that show you're 20 points back of the official opposition in public polling. That's
There's
a
no
huge gap.
Yeah.
Obviously,
that's a big gap. Obviously, it's weighing on his mind. But I like how he referenced before. They second guessed me before. We'll see what happens. So he's staying optimistic, but really liked the pounding on the table, really liked how he got passionate about some things. It wasn't just, some droll interview here. And I thought you pushed him on some great questions. So very good.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Want to note everybody that was in the live chat. I know a lot of new faces in there today, and invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to subscribe, just click follow wherever you get your podcasts. We welcome you to the fold, and we commit to continuing to facilitate these robust conversations. I want to let you know we do have an ask in with Pierre Poilievre, with the leader of the official opposition, and would obviously very much like to interview him on the show, and would open the door to him at any point. We had some great questions about seniors and housing. C&M and Chris both wrote in, wanted us to ask Trudeau about his promise on electoral reform. You may remember a promise made back, many, many years ago there that kind of materialized really into nothing. I thought that was interesting to get his take on the sale of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We know that's going to be happening in the next little bit. Interest rates are high. It remains to be seen what the market's going to look like for that. Cost is up big time on that pipeline expansion. But he says on this show, I never went into that to make a profit for Canada. We went into it because it was the right thing to do. I was intrigued to hear his take on maybe the political price that he paid for buying that pipeline. And interesting to see that he never really, to this day, doesn't get credit in Alberta for making that investment.
Yeah,
People
I know.
just ignore it, which is kind of interesting to get his take on that and see how that lands with him. People are saying that the questions were soft. I see that from Ryan in the chat. But question number one, I said that the polls are predicting a bloodbath in the next election. I don't know how soft that is, but I'll take your point, Ryan. I know some people would speak maybe with more of a sharp tongue.
Of all the interviews he does today, which I'm sure he's doing, I think
he's not doing any others.
Oh, great. But that he does in the coming weeks after these announcements, I'm guessing ours was one of the most candid. So it's going to be great. What was that, number 6 time for you with him? Fifth?
Number 4.
Number 4.
So it was the third interview as Prime Minister once back in the day when he was when he won the Liberal leadership. And then, I think it was 2015-16 right after he got elected. April 20th, if you want to go back in our archives, Trudeau's debut on Real Talk was on April 20th of 2021, of course, 420. And we talked to him about cannabis. It was on my list of questions today, but it wasn't at the top. I thought we could go, 3 for 3 on cannabis questions over the last 3 interviews, but I don't think. But I don't want. I want to acknowledge that there's a lot that we didn't get to. Canada's cannabis industry is struggling. Retailers, LPs, the licensed growers and producers are really struggling. We didn't talk too much about drought in the upcoming wildfire season, though he did touch on it. Obviously, it'll influence any federal government's climate policy, but how are they preparing for what's expected to be a brutal wildfire season, probably particularly in Western Canada, if the trend holds there. He was coy on his thoughts on the stakes of the November 2024 presidential election, and pointed out that his government was able to work with then President Donald Trump on what people might casually call NAFTA 2.0. But I have to believe that deep down inside, he's not the only world leader that's looking at a likely Trump nomination and potential Trump win going, here we go again.
But he also said he worked well with Trump on some issues there. So, I mean, I don't want to say it, Ryan, but it looks like an inevitable. I don't want to say inevitable, but Trump's got a really good chance to be back in the big seat.
Yeah. Tobias says, "Oh yay, another pair of socks for Mr. Socks himself, Justin Trudeau."
Yeah, he loves socks.
Hey, you can't put a price on effective merch like that.
Right?
If you can give the Prime Minister, known for his socks, a pair of custom socks that your talk show has put out, I think that's a win for the talk show, which is great.
And if you want yours, become a Patreon subscriber.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, that's a great point, Johnny. You know, we still do have those socks. You go to ryanjesperson.com. Look at this. You're doing such a good job promoting what we're doing around here. You go to ryanjesperson.com, and if you click on the Connect link, and then you can find the link to our Patreon, you can make a monthly commitment to support us on the show. Our Patreon supporters, our patrons, most recently helped us invest in new microphones.
Yeah, we sound
which means
better.
This podcast is sounding better now than it ever has before. There's also lots of perks, like those socks and other merch that we don't offer for sale. We do exclusive events like our holiday Zoom party. We do bourbon tastings, election night VIP viewing parties, and all kinds of cool stuff. It's just another way that you can support us on the show, and we sure appreciate that. Was there a moment that jumped out? I mean, I know that you had obviously your hands full. There's a lot going on. You're flying the plane as we're in the air.
Yeah.
But was there a subject, or was there a question, or was there a moment in that interview that made a real impression on you in particular, something he dug his heels in on?
I was very involved over here, but I like how he says he wants Alberta to join in here. He wants Alberta to be part of this change and everything, right? Which is like, I know when he came on the show today, the number one thing people are thinking is how at odds some of his policies and things are against Alberta. But I like how he reached out the hand. I thought that was great. We'll have to see how the Premier responds today.
Yeah. I mean, he all but confirmed that he's running in the next election.
100%.
Which is, notable. Because a lot of people have been, taking a look at these polls. Like, just to repeat it, this is recent Abacus data. This was out from David Coletto a short time ago. Like, we're talking days ago. So it's relatively recent polling that shows that the Liberals are down 19 points across the country, and it goes on from there. Obviously, polling stronger in some parts of the country than others. Lowest in Alberta. Big surprise there. But it's also his personal polling that, you have to wonder how that lands with a guy like the Prime Minister. Personal net approval at a minus 33, which is a big deal. I have to imagine that at some point, you talk to professional athletes that are in slumps, and they'll tell you that they don't read the paper. They'll tell you they don't read what's being written about them. I don't know if that's true or not. I have to believe you read everything.
Well, it's impossible to pick up your phone if you're Connor McDavid and you go on X or whatever. How can you not see yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but you look at, I mean, if the approval's still low, or hasn't bumped up in significant ways in the next 6 to 12 months, there will be recurring calls for some sort of leadership review or for the Prime Minister to re-examine his role with that party, leading that party into another election. But he sounded definitively this morning like this is something he's going to do. And I think that that's very interesting to see. So basically, we kind of know exactly how this next election is going to look.
Yeah.
And in my mind, while there will be more than two parties, it'll remain to be seen what role the NDP plays here, whether or not Jagmeet Singh's even leading the NDP into the next election. He played kingmaker in the last one.
Yeah, will it happen again?
And they've helped keep this government in power. Jagmeet, Mr. Singh, says that's not a guarantee. They got the dental care stuff done to a certain degree, so you have to look at that as a win. You can't ignore the NDP's financial woes right now. Quite frankly, they literally couldn't afford to go into another federal election, so you know that they don't want to trigger that. But ultimately, the storyline will be two different visions, I think, of how politics should be done in the country, and two different solutions to some of the issues that are impacting Canadians in very real ways. And that'll be what may be a reinvented, repackaged, reimagined, rebranded Trudeau approach, or the Poilievre approach, which remains to be seen what that is. It's easy to oppose. It's easy to criticize.
It's so easy to be on the other side and throw the bombs, right?
So some of these interactions that we've seen. I think you could go so far as to call them some of the tense interactions or even the conflicts between Pierre Poilievre and journalists. A lot of that stems from journalists pressing the leader of the official opposition for solutions. What's your plan? What would you do here? Why did you not support this?
Sure.
And at some point, people are going to expect more details on what that plan would look like,
Of
so
course.
people can start making up their minds.
Oilers play-by-play guy Jack Michaels would say Trudeau needs to get off the schneid.
Get off the schneid.
Well, I'm curious to see if Pierre Poilievre will be eating an apple during debates.
Oh, man.
Just being all chill.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing. Like, you talk about the Apple Orchard interview, and everybody knows what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Snarkiness.
Poilievre, who's very good at what he does. He has a sharp tongue. He's quick on his feet. He
Ruffles feathers.
He can embarrass people.
He can.
And that's what he was doing in that circumstance. He was embarrassing a journalist
By saying
trying
nothing.
to do their job, but it worked, didn't it? And that's what we're talking about in these emails that we read from people saying, well, basically, why won't the Prime Minister be a bit more of an asshole? Because it seems to be working for Pierre Poilievre. And you wonder if he may change course. I'll take a look at the Prime Minister's comments aimed at Bell Media for a sitting Prime Minister to say that he is pissed off at a major corporation.
It was
at one of the more prominent publicly traded corporations in the country, a huge employer, a hugely profitable company. And don't get me wrong, I love that he did it. And I would like to see more elected officials do it. And I would like to see big corporate media held to account more than they are, because they get a lot of breaks and they do really well in Canada. But that was a spot that he picked. He picked that spot to show that emotion. And you have to wonder if we're going to see more of the fiery Trudeau, or if that's just not his brand.
We need more of it. And that specifically, I know a lot of broadcasters, a lot of people in radio, a lot of people in media here in Alberta who don't agree with much of what Trudeau has said or done in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And they agreed wholeheartedly with him, as Charles Adler pointed out in our interview, with everything he said about Bell and what's happening in that landscape. And I like how he tipped the hat to shows like us at the end of the interview as well.
Yeah, I appreciated that. Someone here on our live chat, I Can Prep Too is the handle, says, gosh, this comment section here on the live chat
It was
is
back and
really
forth today.
sad. I honestly wasn't watching it, with apologies. You guys know I love you. I just got to
Did what I
stay
could.
focused. But I Can Prep Too says, truly, when has Canada been so divided across political lines? Division, says, and this chat is demonstrative of where the country is at after 8 years of Trudeau. Is that causation? Is that correlation? I don't know if I would give Justin Trudeau credit for being the number one divisive factor. I think that there's a lot of factors at play right now. I read an email earlier from someone who was talking about the fact that Canadians are frustrated. A lot of times, I won't directly quote Yoda, but what is it, like something leads to fear and fear leads to anger, right?
Anger leads to the dark side.
And anger
Yeah,
leads to the
of
dark
course.
side. And so when people are afraid, and I'm certainly not making light of this, about the future of their employment or how their family's going to pay their bills or how they're going to keep the lights on and keep milk in the fridge at the same time, then, of course, a lot of times when we get scared, we get angry. And when we're being told that we should be angry and to whom we should direct that anger, then a lot of people are going to find a home there. And I think that is happening. The Prime Minister in this interview with us talked a lot about right-wing ideology. He didn't use the word extremism a lot, but he talked about right-wing ideology and how he thinks that that's influencing the dialogue. And to a certain degree, I do think that's true. And I do think that a lot of other people that would align with quote-unquote right-wing ideology feel ignored and feel disrespected and feel mocked. Even though I don't agree a lot of the comments, I don't agree with a lot of the feedback that we get, it doesn't mean it doesn't land with me. It doesn't mean I don't consider it. And there were a lot of questions from people that were saying things like, when he comes on your show, I wonder what names he'll call us. I wonder what he'll lecture us on next. I wonder what he'll tell us we should be apologizing for next. And so there is that faction of the Canadian population that just feels like the Prime Minister's not meeting them in that middle-class sweet spot where he met them in 2015.
Sure, but there was no name calling today. And like I said, I'll say it again. I liked how he reached out the hand and said, Alberta, we gotta come together and make this country better. But on the divided thing, I think Adler said this best yesterday too as well. I think anyone who's been in this position as prime minister, anyone who's been in power this long, people are going to start, no matter what, getting a little, in need of a change, right?
Yeah.
And feeling like somebody else should take the seat.
This is something that any prime minister, that any premier in Canada that's lucky enough to stick around for long enough will grapple with. And that is the fact that, you look at some of the ultimate examples. I look at, Premier Ernest Manning in Alberta that was premier for like 30 years. You just don't really see stuff like that anymore. These real legacy politicians.
No.
Once a politician is a premier or a prime minister for more than 10 years, it's really difficult to stay on because people start convincing themselves or being convinced that you need change, that you need a new direction. And a lot of times there's some wisdom to that. I know that we're using a lot of sports metaphors, but sometimes, a fabulously talented team can be languishing, and then all of a sudden a change in coaching. It doesn't mean that the previous coach wasn't skilled or didn't do a lot to get him to that point, but the change in coaching makes a big difference and rights that ship. So,
and these days you take a lot of lumps, like you just said, like you're under the microscope now more than ever. Everything's on social media. Everything can be doctored and edited, and you've got people like Pierre Poilievre throwing bombs all the time, and it is super hard. And I'm not excited because I do think everyone's divided, but I'm really, really anxious and ready to see what's going to happen in this next election. It's going to be one for the history books.
Gilles, I think, is bang on in our live chat on YouTube, says social media algorithms have way more to do with divisiveness in our world than the prime minister.
100%.
Says, and it's certainly not all limited to Canada, Gilles, to say the least, right? Speaking of that, by the way, you can subscribe, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Real Talk RJ. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we sure appreciate you liking the episode and sharing it. Before we go any further, we want to get to more of your feedback. We'll dig a little bit deeper into what the Prime Minister just told us in an exclusive one-on-one interview right here in our Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse. You may or may not know that the Bachelor, I'm not talking about the Prime Minister, the other Bachelor, all right? Well, Joey has touched down in our neck of the woods in Jasper. And I want to tell you a little bit about it right now. This is a Wednesday tradition for us here on the show. Presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. It's MyJasper Memories. Now, you know about ABC's hit primetime reality series, right? The Bachelor, one lucky guy offered the chance to find true love. Single, eligible, he embarks on a romantic journey, getting to know a number of beautiful women, gradually narrowing down the field. And at the end of the romantic voyage, if he's found the one, he will offer her his final rose, a beautiful ring from Neil Lane, and hopefully the rest is history. Although, mixed reaction on whether or not it'll last. But that's not what we're going to focus on today, Johnny. I want to let you know that Joey and the remaining bachelorettes this coming Monday on ABC, that's February 26th, will be featured. Their visit, that is, to the majestic Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. Now, we can't give you the exact details of what will be in the episode, but I can guarantee if you love The Bachelor, if you love the franchise, you're going to love it. Now, of course, Jasper and the national park itself, nestled in the Rocky Mountains, has been basically the home for romance. How many proposals, probably? How many honeymoons have we seen in Canada's romance capital? That is Jasper National Park, and Tourism Jasper is a proud participant in the upcoming episode. Again, that's this Monday, February 26th. You're going to see romantic dates in the mountain town. You'll see them cozying up at the luxurious and historic Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. And of course, you can follow them and all of the activities on the Tourism Jasper Instagram page. Give them a follow at Tourism Jasper. My wife Carrie,
I was going to say, you guys spent your honeymoon out there.
Man, we had such a wonderful time. We got married in Costa Rica, but when we came back, we just felt like we needed a few extra days. And so we extended our honeymoon at the Fairmont, made sure we hit the chairlifts at Marmot Basin, did some snowboarding together.
For our YouTube listeners, look at these young bucks.
Look at these young kids. Woo! This was me. This is like the before picture. This is what you look like before you go into talk radio. Everyone's like, what happened to him? This was the young fella, his beautiful young bride, back in April of 2009.
Wow.
As newlyweds. That's the shore of Lac Beauvert. Make sure you tune in to ABC The Bachelor this coming Monday to see more present day as the Bachelor finds love and makes his own MyJasper Memories, presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Where did you guys get engaged?
Oh gosh, we
Do you
don't
want to get into it? You don't want to get into it?
Well, we do, but I know.
We want to hear it.
My partner's listening today, but we had kind of a sad happenstance in our relationship. So her mother was diagnosed with cancer. She beat it once. A few years later, came back, and we knew we loved each other. We'd known each other for 7 years. We'd only been dating a year, but we thought, hey, she's got limited time left. We want to give her a special present before, she leaves this life. And so we literally got engaged. I proposed in the hospital room, just me, her, and her mother.
That is so
and
beautiful.
then we got married. The mayor of Fort Saskatchewan came down to the hospital on a Saturday. Pretty tight schedule. Just called her up and said, hey, we're doing this. And she was nice enough to come down. We got married kind of in the lounge area in one of the private rooms where you kind of wait, and had a few friends, because she's from Fort Saskatchewan, come down and be there as witnesses, and her mom, and kind of live streamed in my mom. And
man, that's amazing.
And yeah, so
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was a tough time, but it's also so special to me how it happened. So it's something I'll never forget. Obviously, you never forget your wedding, but that was just something that was.
I think that's the best
extra.
engagement story I've ever heard.
It's pretty. Yeah, but then
I'm serious.
we did the following year. We went to Veradero. And got married, redid our vows on a beach. So that was very nice. Just the two of us.
That's beautiful,
Yeah,
man.
so
that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. Are you seeing the love in the live chat right now? We got a lot of hearts in there for you,
Oh,
buddy.
it's coming in. Thank
for
you,
you and your
everybody.
beautiful bride.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, life throws you a curveball, and sometimes, like at the time, your head is a mess, and you're wondering if this is even going to work. Is this a crazy idea? But now it's so great to have been able to give her that gift before she left. This plane.
That's incredible, Johnny. That's amazing. Glenna says, good on you. Sharon says, that's not sad. Says, that's very sweet. Jillian says, that's a lovely story. I love that, dude. Who would have thought that you would overshadow Joey the Bachelor when we're talking love? And the Prime Minister, arguably, on the show.
No, but shout out to my partner, Jacinder. She's everything in my world. I love you.
Lady. Daily BMJ says, well, Jess, I hope you got paid for such a milquetoast interview of our leader during one of the most trying times in Canadian history. Such a sad time. I don't think that it's a sad time in Canada, and I have to believe that there are enough people, including people that are listening to this podcast, that are watching this on YouTube, that believe that Canada is one of the most wonderful places to call home on planet Earth, and that believe that we can do better in politics and in life. And I loved this comment here. I found it in the chat from somebody. Who was it that basically said, let's just take a second while it was heated in the chat. I'm going to have to take your word for it. I'm going to have to go back and just watch the live chat through this interview. But who was it? Somebody came in here, popped in here, and just said, basically, let's all remember that we're people behind these screens. This was Brett, who says today was very heated. He says, I know I contributed to it. Let's just take a moment to remember we're all people behind a screen. I agree, Brett. And there's also nothing wrong with heated. Right? As long as it's respectful, there's nothing wrong with heated. People have different opinions. People have strong convictions about policy and how things should be done, and when government should get involved, and when government should get out of the way, and when government should work together, and when government should tell different levels of government to pound sand. And we want to debate that stuff, and we want to litigate that stuff in a credible forum. And that's what we endeavor to do here every day. And we can't do that without the engaged audience that we have. So we really appreciate that. Appreciate all of you chiming in and checking in. Hey, if you have something, though, in response to this interview that you just have to get off your chest, and you don't feel like using gentle words and soft phrases, if milquetoast just isn't even in your arsenal, I want to let you know that the final episode of every week, that's Fridays, we present The Flamethrower, which is presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This is your chance to say what needs to be said to the most engaged talk show audience in the country. You can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Make sure you pop Flamethrower there into the subject line of the email. I know that we're going to be getting a lot of emails.
I was just going to say it's going to be lit up this Friday after that interview.
No, it'll be very good. I'm sure for that. Jillian says we got to play a fun game here. When somebody says people are fed up and they're leaving Canada, ask who and where are they going, and you'll get crickets. I thought that, Jillian. until our February 20th episode of the show. That's yesterday, Tuesday, with Charles Adler, where he put the story. You knew about it. Chuck knew about it. I didn't know about it.
The family.
About this family, this Canadian family that moved to Russia to get away from Canada's gay dictatorship. And so this guy and his wife moved their 8 kids. I feel so sorry for these kids, who obviously played no role, I wouldn't think, in the decision. They moved them all to Russia, and they don't speak the language. They didn't understand much about the culture, except for that they weren't going to have, quote unquote, trans ideology stuff down their throats. And now they found that the Russian banks are seizing their assets, and they're getting nowhere, and they're in real trouble. And this guy's kind of having his wake up call, I guess, that maybe things weren't so bad in Canada. So I guess there is one example of people that are leaving Canada to go somewhere else, but it's not exactly a greener grass
Working
on the
out
other
how
side
they-
of the fence type
how they
situation.
planned, yeah.
I couldn't believe that. Adler told me that. If you're listening or watching to our February 20th episode, and I'm trying to school myself on the story and get up to speed as fast as I can, and I'm going, what the hell is going on here? What did this family do? I mean, picking up and moving to Russia in the middle of its aggression against Ukraine, and sorry to state the obvious, but you got to question the wisdom of parents that are making judgment calls like that. There they are. Unbelievable. Look at those. We're showing them for those of you on the podcast.
We're talking about the
Look at
kids
these
yesterday,
poor little
right?
kids.
Like,
Look
they
at the
don't
kids.
know what's
Kids have
going
no
on.
idea.
Now they're in Moscow.
Got to imagine their teenagers are have a
I'm
bit of an
starting
idea
to laugh.
of what's
It's
happening.
just- it's
Geez,
crazy.
right? Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, listen, before we go any further, I wanted to let you know a couple of things. Number one, there's going to be news coming out of our home city of Edmonton. You're seeing there's a lot of talk about strike action here. We're talking about Civic Service Union 52, and this is something that you are going to be seeing in the news. They're fighting for an Edmonton for everybody, and they're asking you to show your support. They're looking for a fair bargaining agreement with the city of Edmonton. So who are we talking about here? Well, you can go to edmontonforeveryone.ca to see more. We're talking about 911 operators. We're talking about those that are working in police information checks, 311 operators. You know that they average 5,000 calls a day to 311. Those operators would be out of there. Rec center staff, library staff, animal control. You don't want animal control going on strike. You got an issue, who are you going to call? So here's the deal. They're your neighbors. They're your community members. They pay taxes too. But for the last 5 years, more than 80% of their member wages have been frozen. They want you to urge the city to avoid a work stoppage by visiting edmontonforeveryone.ca. You can show your support. This message is presented by Civic Service Union. That's CSU 52. If all this talk about the job market, the future of the economy in Canada, innovation, industry has lit a fire under you, you're feeling more inspired now than ever before, may we recommend you take 2 seconds to check out Athabasca University. It's Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever or whenever it works for you. You might be listening to this in Victoria. You might be listening to this in Halifax. You might be listening to this in Timbuktu. You can open your options with online offerings at Athabasca University by checking out the AU Advantage today at athabascau.ca. We also wanted to let you know, if you are in the province of Alberta, and heaven forbid this wildfire season, your home, your business, your community is impacted, make sure you have Complete Care Restoration locked and loaded. You can give them a call. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca. For more than a quarter century, they've been helping people get comprehensive care and complete peace of mind in the face of disaster. Your property is in safe hands with Complete Care Restoration, whether it's fire, flood, black mold, asbestos, you name it, they have the certified professionals, and they'll treat your property like it's their very own. Make sure you don't miss that call to Complete Care Restoration. And John, I wanted to put Grand Dog Essentials quality raw food on everybody's radar, especially if you're watching or listening in the province of Alberta. That means they can offer you delivery to your door. Whether it's a dog or a cat, there are so many benefits to a raw diet. You can learn more by checking out the blog link on their website at granddog.ca. Heck, no matter where you live, you can learn more information and tips on feeding your dog and your cat a raw food diet. And they've got some great specials through the month of February that you're going to want to check out, including salmon. They've got the omega-3s going on. That's Grand Dog's Salmon Raw Pet Food Blend. It's great for smaller dogs. It's great for the big pups. And cats love that fine texture when you go with Grand Dog salmon, raw pet food blend. You can place your order at granddog.ca. I see this from Egg in our live chat who says, man, I hope that this wildfire season isn't terrible. But we're seeing it in more and more communities. BC and Alberta, they've already declared it, like you just said, open.
It's insane.
Wildfire season is happening, and we look at the snowpack that just isn't there right now. And fire chiefs are working. Fire chiefs are competing for the attention of elected officials right now because they need to know what the plan is. We're not used to having these conversations just after Valentine's Day.
And after electricity scares and water scares back to back, it's,
Yeah, so, this is something that obviously we're paying close attention to, and we're going to be, we're actually working on a water roundtable, which is going to be coming up. For those of you that are new to the show, maybe finding Real Talk for the first time today, every Friday we present a Real Talk roundtable. And this week, we're actually going to be spinning off the University of Alberta Chancellor's Forum on houselessness. We're going to be talking about housing and affordability solutions across the country. That's going to be presented right here on Real Talk. That's coming up this Friday, which is going to be February 23rd. You won't want to miss that episode. But in episodes to come, in Fridays to come, a water roundtable and others. The Alberta government declaring an early start, as John just mentioned, to the 2024 wildfire season. They say dry weather in the forecast. It was Alberta Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen that said earlier this week the season is officially declared open. I mean, this isn't like the Olympic Games. They're not cutting a ribbon on it. This is not a good news story. 10 days earlier than the usual start of March 1st, the province says that it's confident that it's got the tools and the personnel in place. They are asking for extra funding in the Alberta budget. That's going to be released at the end of this month. I believe February 29th is the day off the top of my head. So we'll have a roundtable coming up on Friday, March 1st as well. We'll dig into the budget and what it means to you. But they're hoping, and Minister Loewen says in that, funding to hire an extra 100 firefighters that'll be in the field by May 15th. That'll bring the number of wildfire fighters in our home province to about 1,000. And they expect those numbers to be topped up by April 15th. But you remember when those numbers are really high, and you don't want to sort of forecast the numbers of how many fires we'll have or how many active fires we'll have, but it's not unusual to have 130, 140, 150 active fires burning. If you think that you've got 1,000 wildfire personnel on the job and you split it around the number of fires, I'm not suggesting there's only 3 or 4 working on every fire. The resources are diverted where they need to be, and a lot of that will be air attack and that type of thing. But it puts it into perspective what that need looks like. I'll never forget driving out to BC last fall to visit some friends. And we're driving through Sparwood, BC, which has a long history in industry. The biggest truck. Have you ever seen the biggest truck in the world in Sparwood? That big green dump truck that was used for mining. It's so cool. But seeing these fire engines, like the ladder trucks and the pumps, it was such an ominous scene that the whole hillside. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, so I would have got some photos. But the entire hillside burning, or at least big pockets of it. And there's the town of Sparwood nestled there, and you've got these ladders and pumps just sort of spread out, and they're just parked, and they're just facing the woods. They're facing that forest, and they're just holding the line there. And that was just one story of one community in one Canadian province. But we know that this is going to be more of a reality. If you want to learn more about wildfire season in Canada and what author John Valiant calls the upcoming century of fire, you can check out our archives for that. Just search for Century of Fire. That author, an unbelievable storyteller, did a really good job putting it in perspective.
Yeah, be interesting to see if the Premier addresses some of this tonight with what happened with the electricity and the water. She's giving her State of the Province tonight at 6:30. I know she's been meeting with elected officials in the States, and with Tucker Carlson. She was talking about doubling and tripling and our oil production. So it'll be interesting to see if the Premier addresses some of this tonight, as people are obviously on social media been worried about the looming wildfire season, but how it started so early this year on social media this week.
Kind of an unusual it's not unprecedented, obviously, but for a premier to take to televition to address the province, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And obviously the TV stations love it because they get paid big time for that. We'll have to get the premier to do her next one here on Real Talk. We'll charge the going rate. We'll give them 5% off the going rate. Our overhead's a little bit lower than the big guys, but we'll see if she touches on that. I'd be surprised if she didn't mention the Prime Minister
Well,
coming to Alberta.
interestingly timed,
The province
he's
will
here.
not be at the housing announcement today.
No.
You can read into that or not, depending on your perspective. Is it significant that the province isn't part of the housing announcement? Maybe, maybe not. It's a partnership between the feds and the municipalities. That's what the FCM, it's called the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, has called for, is more collaboration. They don't put it as skipping or moving past or excluding the provinces, of course, but they're asking for these municipalities across the country for more cooperation and direct investment, collaboration between the feds and municipalities in particular for these sort of custom cut solutions to housing, whether that's affordability, availability, or otherwise. Obviously, it's all tied in together. Again, we want to remind you that our inbox is open right now. I haven't even checked, but I can smell it. My computer's just working harder. I feel like we're getting slammed right now to talk. At RyanJasperson.com, and we've got some great episodes in store. In the meantime, and of course, you can stay tuned to our social media for all announcements on upcoming episodes, plus highlights from today's conversation with the Prime Minister and more. If you don't yet subscribe to our YouTube channel, we invite you to do so, and we thank you in advance for doing so. Thanks to those of you that signed up to support us on Patreon today. I can see it. I can see you there. Welcome to the fold. You'll be getting a note from us as we get those socks in the mail to you. And don't forget, if we take anything from today's episode, it's that engagement matters, involvement in politics and community matters, and we thank you for doing your part. We promise to keep doing ours right here, bringing you Real Talk weekday mornings. We'll see you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Duvedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out RyanJasperson.com.